Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I'm encumbered with all kinds of electronic equipment. I'm going to show you many things. I will explain them as we go along. And then I'll take some questions afterwards. All right. And after I talk and take some questions, Case will explain the story of the duck, which I think some of you know already, but not in detail. All right. I'm going to tell you about the Ig Nobla Prizes. Very briefly to start, Ig Nobla Prizes are prizes. We give out 10 of them every year, and we've had a ceremony every year since 1991. They are unusual. These prizes honor things that make people laugh and then think. That's the beginning and the end of it. Things that make people laugh, then think. I'm going to tell you about a few of the people who won prizes in the past. Then I will tell you about the most recent set of Ig Nobel winners. I want to begin by telling you about two sad stories. Two of the winners, who I knew very well, have died in recent months, and I want to memorialize them a little bit. The first is named John Senders. John Senders won an Ig Nobel Prize in 2011. We gave it the category of public safety. We always choose a category for each prize. He was almost 100 years old when he died. He had a very long and, I think, pretty happy life. You're about to see a little piece of a news report from the BBC in England. This was done in the early 1960s when John was doing his research work, which much later won a prize. He was interested in the question of people driving an automobile on a crowded road, on a highway, about distraction. How much distraction can a driver tolerate before things become dangerous?
And the interest in ideas. But their work isn't all desk work, as shown by this experiment on the attention span needed for safe driving. The experimenter is against director, psychologist John Senders.
Driving along a section of Route 128, and I'm trying to get an estimate of the demand by this particular section of road. The speed of the car is constant, and as the road varies from moment to moment in the demand that it makes upon me, I must look.
Yeah, anyway, you get a feel for that. And the second person I want to tell you about, who also died recently, is named Troy Hurtubise. Troy was Canadian. Troy, in 1968, won an Ig Nobel Prize. At that point, he had spent about 7 years building and personally testing a suit of armor that he hoped would protect him against grizzly bears.
Good enough for those. Yeah. So what we did was we built another suit, which we had planned to do, and redid the test, this time magnify them to how would one say, refute all. We pushed the trucks up to 3-ton trucks at 50 kilometers an hour. And then, of course, we did the board.
A 3-ton truck ran into at 50 kilometers an hour?
18 times.
I hope you will agree that these things you've just seen deserve some kind of prize. And that's what they got. They got some kind of prize. Each of those was awarded an Ig Nobel Prize. Something else I want to mention about Troy. This is a fact that I learned recently. After he died, not from this activity, after he died, there were obituaries in the newspapers in Canada. And in one of those obituaries, there was a fact I did not know. You remember that truck that you just saw crashed into him? It crashed into him 17 times. The driver of that truck was Troy's father. All right. The Ig Nobel Prizes are good examples of, or what they rewarded, good examples of what we would call improbable research. Improbable research is also the name of my magazine. By improbable, what I mean mostly is whatever you think is going to appear in front of you, it's not that. It's not what you expect. That's the quality we look for. Things that are not what people expect, things that are surprising. Again, this quality we can sum up in a few words by saying it's all about things that make people laugh and then think. Things that there's something about them that when you first encounter it, it's funny. It's so far outside your experience, it's funny. But there's also something about it that sticks inside people's minds so that a week later, you're still thinking about it and you want to tell your friends. That's the double quality that all this is about. Now, I'm going to take this chance to show you a few of the many spectacular things that have won prizes over the past 29 years, and then we'll look at the new winners. This is a medical report. It was published in The Lancet, which is one of the top medical journals in the world. The title of this pretty much tells the whole story. It's about a man who pricked his finger and smelled putrid for 5 years. Here's a patent. The main inventor is Dr. Elena Bodnar, who is Ukrainian. Dr. Bodnar describes this as an emergency bra. It's a brassiere that, in an emergency, can be quickly separated into a pair of protective face masks. One to save your life, one to save the life of some lucky bystander. Is anyone curious about why Dr. Bodnar invented this? Right. When she was a young doctor, when she had just graduated from medical school in Ukraine, the Chernobyl power plant, Chernobyl nuclear power plant, melted down. She was one of the doctors who treated victims of Chernobyl. And ever since then, she and some other doctors talk to each other now and then and stay in touch with some of the patients to try to learn what was the real medical story of Chernobyl. Was it what the doctors expected, or was there some surprise? She said one of the big surprises for the doctors was that the major, really bad medical damage often came from the little particles, the little radioactive particles in the air that people breathed in. And when those got stuck in people's lungs, that was very bad news. She moved to the United States, she and her husband. They had a baby. And during this whole time, she was thinking about Chernobyl and thinking there must be something that could be done so that when an emergency like that happens, people could save themselves, even for a few minutes. That would make a big difference. But what? What could be everywhere? Something simple. And then when she had her baby, one day she was at home, her baby son was on the floor and picked up his mother's bra and put it over his face. That's where the idea came from. The prototype for this was shown to the public for the first time at the Ig Nobel Prize ceremony, where she came to accept her prize. We have a ceremony. It's a big ceremony. It's very complicated. It happens at Harvard University in the United States. There are a bunch of Nobel Prize winners on stage who shake hands with the Ig Nobel Prize winners. The winners are kept secret until that moment on stage when we introduce them. What you're going to see now is Dr. Bodnar with the first public look at the emergency bra. She reached inside her dress, pulled out her bra, separated into 2 pieces, you see that. And then she looked around, she said, I need some volunteers to help demonstrate this. She asked 3 of those Nobel Prize winners to come and assist her. We have film of all of this that you can see on our website. We record all of the Ig Nobel ceremonies. They're on the site. We televise it live. In fact, in 1995, we pretty much invented webcasting for that year's Ig Nobel ceremony. And this is a moment worth savoring. Look at those expressions on the faces. This won an Ig Nobel Medicine Prize about 20 years ago. It was written by 3 doctors in Scotland. You can see the title of their reports, The Collapse of Toilets in Glasgow. They had a series of patients who were injured while sitting on a toilet. They were not all sitting on the same toilet at the same time. And the doctors wondered, what's happening here? Is it something about the way the patients are behaving? Are they doing something strange? Or are they all gigantic, heavy people? But no, they're just normal people. The story turned out to be mostly that they live in a city with some very, very old buildings that are not maintained and a lot of toilets that are not maintained well. And every once in a while, when you make your travel plans, you might want to keep this in mind. The man in black here won an Ig Nobel Prize, won an Ig Nobel Peace Prize. He is the inventor of karaoke. He is from Japan, and he came all the way over to North America to collect his prize. He was not very well known before that night, and afterwards he was. The next day in Japan especially, this was the big news. And we had a nice little speech that he gave, and then those 3 people in white are all Nobel Prize winners, and they went up to him, they put their arms around him, and they sang a karaoke tribute to the man who invented karaoke. And all the people in the theater, all 1,100 people, leaped up, and they all sang this tribute to the man who invented karaoke. This paper won the Ig Nobel Prize for Physics one year. You can see the title is An Analysis of the Forces Required to Drag Sheep Over Various Surfaces. This work was done in Australia. When we select Ig Nobel winners, in almost every case, we get in touch with them very quietly. We offer them the prize. We give them the opportunity to say no if they want to. But happily, almost everybody says yes. When I called them to offer them the prize, they immediately said yes. That phone call always stays in my mind because that was a case where that phone call was the first moment any of them realized that what they did was funny. And they say they got into this because they were asked by the local industry. Sheep is the big industry in the part of Australia where they live. And they say one of the most important things they discovered is it's easier to drag a sheep downhill. This is a penguin. And you may know that many penguins, when they poo, when they excrete, they send a long stream of white material out their rear end. That's what those white lines are. We gave a prize to the team of scientists who calculated how much pressure must build up inside a penguin to make this possible. The man holding the cup of coffee won an Ig Nobel Physics Prize a few years ago. He analyzed the physics of what happens when you hold a cup of hot coffee the normal way in your hand, extended like this, and walk across a room backwards. He was inspired by an Ig Nobel Prize we gave about 10 years earlier to a team of scientists who studied what happens when you hold a cup of hot coffee in your hand, extended, and walk forwards. And it turns out the physics is very different in those. When you walk forwards, you get into a rhythm. Everybody walks pretty easily. And that rhythm gets transferred to the cup, which gets transferred to the water, to the coffee, and it spills. But when you walk backwards, you probably do not get into that same kind of rhythm, so that not the same thing happens. He was a high school student in South Korea when he did that work. And you may notice there's another person in the picture. And that person is not wearing many clothes, and that he's painted silver, and that he's holding a flashlight, a torch. His name is Jim Brett, and he is at the ceremony every year. He's a human spotlight. His job is to illuminate the proceedings. Now, he is really Dr. Jim Brett. He has a PhD from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology from MIT. He's an inventor. He has many patents. He has started several companies. To me, two of his inventions are especially important. One of them is this idea of the human spotlight. Jim Brett invented that. The other is a thing called 3D printing, three-dimensional printing. Jim Brett is one of the people who invented that. Same guy. In 1965, a patent was granted to George and Charlotte Blonsky, a married couple. This drawing is from their patent. They describe this as a device to assist a woman in giving birth. This device, as you can see, consists of a large round table with some machinery. When the woman is about ready to give birth to her child, she lies on her back on the table. They strap her down to the table, and then the table is rotated at high speed, and the child comes flying out through centrifugal force. You may look at that drawing and have some questions. And I would urge you to go to the internet and get a copy of the patent. Look at that, look at the other drawings, read it. It's a beautiful piece of writing, and you will have even more questions. This is your old colleague, Prabhu Yazdi, and you heard the story of that. The Irish police force, the National Irish Police Force, won an Ig Nobel Prize, I believe in the field of peace, for doing this. And with an individual or a small team, when we get in touch with them to offer them the prize, it's usually fairly straightforward to find them and talk with them. But when you're dealing with a government organization or a large company, often it's nearly impossible to find somebody who will officially talk to you. With the Irish police, we found a lot of people who were very happy to talk to us. Nobody was willing to officially say yes, but nobody wanted to say no. So they were very cooperative. We could not persuade any of them to actually come to the ceremony, but they were all very pleased. And so we did find this particular person to come and let us display her document at the ceremony. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the ceremony, a little bit more. The ceremony is complicated, has many pieces, and they go very, very quickly. We all have suffered throughout our lifetimes from having to sit through many public events where there are lots and lots of people giving speeches, and they go on and on and on, and nobody knows how to stop that. We found a way to deal with that problem. And we also found some other things that happen. Again, this happens in September every year at Harvard University. It's in the biggest theater. It's also the biggest classroom, fits 1,100 people. And the winners, of course, get an Ig Nobel Prize. This is an Ig Nobel Prize. These are always handmade. It's a new design every year. They're always made from extremely cheap materials. This was the 2017 prize. We always choose a theme for the ceremony. The theme with the year of that prize was the heart. And the theme and the things that win prizes are not connected. The theme is for the other stuff that happens on stage, for the opera and the other things. And I mentioned that we have a bunch of famous scientists. Many of them have Nobel Prizes on stage. This picture was taken about 10 years ago, and that year we had 9 Nobel Prize winners who were on stage helping to hand out the prizes. I'll mention one of the other people you see there, too. In the back row on the right, there's an older gentleman with white hair and glasses, smiling. His name is Benoit Mandelbrot. He's the inventor of a mathematical concept you may have heard of called fractals. And if you haven't heard of it, talk to some of the people around you afterward. I think they'll be happy to tell you all about fractals. And he was a part of our group for quite a few years. You may also notice there's a little girl there. She is, in some ways, the most important person in the whole ceremony. Every year, we go out, we search, and we find a very special 8-year-old girl. Very cute, very smart, very strong personality. She sits on the stage during the entire ceremony, and I explain to everybody that whenever she feels somebody has talked long enough, she will let them know. Whenever we tell the winners, you get to talk longer than anybody else. You get about 1 minute. Think about all the ceremonies you have endured during your lifetime when this does not happen. Whenever she feels somebody's talked long enough, she gets up, she walks all the way across the stage, she comes up to where the person is talking at the microphone. She looks up at that person and she says, "Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored." She does not stop until they do. And it works. The winners all get cash. Each winning team gets $10 trillion. They get a $10 trillion bill from the country of Zimbabwe. Here, too, if you're not familiar with this history of Zimbabwe and its money, just ask some of the people around you, and they will be happy to explain this. The person responsible for creating these $10 trillion bills, there are also $100 trillion bills, is named Dr. Gideon Gono. He was the head of the national bank in the country of Zimbabwe. He won an Ig Nobel Prize in mathematics for doing this. This is Sanders Theater at Harvard University. This is where the ceremony takes place. And as you can see, the audience has a tradition of bringing paper, and they spend the whole night throwing paper airplanes at the stage. And the people on stage throw it right back. Looking around, I see some of you have paper. Feel free to continue this tradition here if you like. And when this happens, when you've got a theater filled with 1,100 people throwing paper airplanes, the paper airplanes pile up. And they pile up so quickly, so much, that it's necessary to have people sweeping the airplanes, or else it becomes impossible to walk. This is Roy Glauber, a Harvard physics professor who spent 10 years sweeping paper airplanes at the Ig Nobel ceremony. After he had spent 10 years doing that, he got a telephone call one day from Stockholm, Sweden, informing him that he had been selected to win a Nobel Prize in physics. And ever since then, Roy has come to the ceremony every year, and he helps now hand out the prizes to the Ig Nobel winners, and he continues to sweep paper airplanes every year. But I'm showing his picture mostly because there's sad news. A few weeks ago, Roy died. Roy was in his 90s, and he too had a long, very happy life. The broom will continue to be part of the ceremony because he gave me the broom, and that broom was going to have new life. And we're trying to figure out who should have the honor next year of using Roy Glauber's broom. Now look at that picture. You can date the year of that picture pretty easily. If you look between Roy and the broom, you'll see a suit of armor. That's Troy Hurtubis's suit of armor. This was taken the year that Troy got his prize for the grizzly bear work. And now, very quickly, I'll run through a description of the most recent Ig Nobel Prize winners. We gave a prize in the field of medicine. Went to 2 doctors who used roller coaster rides to try and hasten the passage of kidney stones. They wrote a paper which was published in a medical journal called Validation of a Functional da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da while riding a roller coaster. This picture you're seeing now is a part of that published report to illustrate how it works. It's the kidney and the piping that comes out of the kidney. These kidney stones, if you're unlucky enough to form them, are extremely painful. They get formed in the kidney, they then are carried by the stream of urine out of your body, if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, it becomes much more difficult. And it's very painful when they get stuck. This is where they get stuck, you can see, anywhere along that line. This is a roller coaster. It's a historic roller coaster. This all started with one patient. You can aim better than that, I'm sure. Oh, wow, this is a beautiful looking construction. I don't know how well it flies, but may I? Whoa, sorry. This is a roller coaster. This particular patient who had many kidney stones went to Florida, visited Disney World, and rode on that roller coaster, and then passed a kidney stone. So he thought about this and instantly decided, aha, and he got right back on the roller coaster, rode it again, and passed a second kidney stone. So he got right back on again, and he passed a third kidney stone. And he told his doctors about this. They had never dreamed of anything like this. So they did a whole series of experiments. Here's the patient. And here's one of the doctors at the Ig Nobel ceremony giving his acceptance speech. We gave an Ig Nobel Prize in the field of anthropology, the study of humans and apes and chimpanzees and all animals closely related to all of us. It's a team that was based in, still is based in Sweden, and they were honored for collecting evidence in a zoo that chimpanzees imitate humans about as often and about as well as humans imitate chimpanzees. They published this paper called Spontaneous Cross-Species Imitation in Interactions Between Chimpanzees and Zoo Visitors. There's a little piece of video here from some research that they performed. This gives you an idea of how they did it. And here's part of the team at the Ig Nobel ceremony getting advice about finishing their acceptance speech. We gave a prize in the field of biology this year. Went to a large team also based in Sweden. This was a good year for Sweden. They were honored for demonstrating that wine experts, people who buy and sell wine and evaluate wine, they demonstrated that wine experts can reliably identify, purely by smelling, the presence of a single fly in a glass of wine. They published this paper about it called The Scent of the Fly. Here too, with all these things, I'm telling you only a very quick version of the story. There are many more details. Some of them are even better than the things I'm telling you. So you might want to get a hold of this. And this is a picture of a glass of wine with a fly in it. Here's the team at the ceremony giving their acceptance speech. And then we thought, this is sort of complicated. We should demonstrate this for the audience. So we asked some of the scientists on stage to take part in a demonstration. One of those glasses had a fly in it. See if you can tell which one. The Ig Nobel Prize for Chemistry was awarded to a team from Portugal. They were honored for measuring the degree to which human saliva, spit, They measured the degree to which human saliva is a good cleaning agent for dirty surfaces. They published a paper about that called Human Saliva as a Cleaning Agent for Dirty Surfaces. These are people who work in art museums, in good art museums, with very rare, expensive art. These are the people who clean those paintings, those statues, who repair them, and need to be extremely careful with this stuff. Something that's not well known outside their professional world is that spit has always been one of the main things they use, rather than some other kind of soap. They got wondering, is this a good thing we're doing, or are we doing something dangerous here? So they did this. If you look at the words, you can see a very detailed chemical analysis. And they discovered that indeed it is a very good cleaning substance for these things. They were not able to travel to the ceremony. So one of the team made this little video speech. We played this at the ceremony. I would like to play it for you.
On behalf of my mentor, Dr. Adília Alarcão, and myself, I would like to thank the Ig Nobla Board of Governors for considering our work. And also, I know that it seems quite improbable, but human saliva is indeed an effective cleaning agent for surfaces like paintings, sculptures, or gilded wood. But don't try to use it in your kitchen counters. Thank you and have a nice evening. Bye.
We gave a prize in the field of medical education. Went to a Japanese doctor named Akira Horiuchi. Dr. Horiuchi was honored for the medical report he wrote called Colonoscopy. Everybody know what a colonoscopy is? If you don't, ask. Is there anyone who'd like to demonstrate? No? His report was called Colonoscopy in the Sitting Position, Lessons Learned from Self-Colonoscopy. Here is his report, same title you just heard. This is the beginning of it. I'm going to show you now the bottom of this same page. Dr. Horiuchi came all the way from Japan to be in the ceremony. He was very excited, and he insisted on doing a demonstration on stage. The Ig Nobel Prize for Literature was awarded this year to a team based in Australia. They won for documenting that most people who use complicated products do not read the instruction manual. They published this report about that. The report is called Life is Too Short to RTFM. And here's the head of the team modeling a dress that she had made specially. We gave a prize in the field of nutrition. It was awarded to James Cole. He was honored for calculating that the caloric intake, the nutritional value, the caloric intake from a human cannibalism diet is significantly lower than the caloric intake from most other traditional meat diets. This is the paper where he explained all of it, called Assessing the Caloric Significance of Episodes of Human Cannibalism in the Paleolithic. Here he is at the ceremony. The Ig Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to a team based in Spain. They were honored for measuring the frequency, the motivation, and the effects of shouting and cursing while driving an automobile. They published this report about it called Shouting and Cursing While Driving: Frequency, Reasons, Perceived Risk and Punishment. Here is one of the team members at the ceremony. He was doing just fine until the little girl came over, and then he started shouting and cursing. We gave a prize this year in the field of reproductive medicine. Went to a team of 3 doctors. They were honored for using postage stamps to test whether the male sex organ is functioning properly. They described this in a report they called Nocturnal Penile Tumescence Monitoring with Stamps. Perhaps I should explain in a little more detail how this works. I'll show you the report. This is the beginning of the report. And now the next picture shows you some illustrations that are part of that published report. Until recently, in most of the world, postage stamps came on a roll, perforated that way. It's easy to separate them, these perforations. And there's a reason this was valuable. The problem the doctors were looking at is this. There are a lot of older men who come to the doctor and they're worried that they're no longer getting erections, or they're no longer getting the erections working the way they should. And for the doctor, the first question to be answered is a difficult question to answer. Is this a biological problem? Is this purely a physical problem? Or is this mostly a psychological problem? And how does a doctor answer that question? If you're the doctor and you have a patient, how are you going to figure out the answer to that simple question? You know, of course, the doctor could, well, what doctors always have known, or at least believed, is that most men every night get several erections. Typically, they say 7 or 8 a night. But of course, the man is asleep and doesn't know that. So the doctor could, you know, in theory, just stand and watch the patient all night. But there are problems doing that, so that's not what they do. For many years, the treatment that a lot of doctors used involved a really complicated machine. It's also very expensive to use and very embarrassing for everybody. So nobody was happy with that way of doing it, but it was the best they had. And then these doctors came up with a better way, a simpler way, and a much less expensive way. What they tell the patient is, take some stamps, take some postage stamps, and just before you go to sleep, wrap them around your penis and seal them. Then in the morning, look and see what happened. If the stamps have separated, that's good news. Very simple test. That's what this is about. Here are the doctors, and 2 of them. This one is a little more subtle. And finally, we gave a prize in the field of economics. The economics prize went to a large team that's based in Canada. They won for investigating whether it is effective for employees to use voodoo dolls against abusive bosses. They wrote this report to explain what they did. The report is called Righting a Wrong: Retaliation on a Voodoo Doll Symbolizing an Abusive Supervisor Restores Justice. And what they were curious about here, what they were trying to figure out was, every year, really every day around the world, there are people who get angry at their bosses. Some of them get so angry that they actually try to commit murder. And some of them do murder their bosses. So what these people were trying to figure out is, if we let them do something else that's not so violent, like stick pins in a doll that represents your boss, could that simple thing keep them from trying to actually murder the person? And what they say they discovered is, yeah, this could make a difference. That's what this was about. And here's the team at the Ig Nobel ceremony. You can see one of them is holding a voodoo doll. They bought that on the internet from a company that manufactures voodoo dolls. And in case you're looking for a lot of voodoo dolls, I can put you in touch with them. And at the end of every ceremony, we ask all the people who are part of it to gather at the center of the stage for this pointless photo opportunity. That's what you're seeing here. Now, I want to tell you about one other old Ig Nobel Prize and how it relates to a part of the Ig Nobel ceremony. One of the things that's in the ceremony every year is a new little opera. I write an opera. I steal the music from dead composers, but I write a story and words. And it's about the theme of the ceremony. And the opera one year was based on this paper. This was a psychology paper that won an Ig Nobel Prize back in the year 2000. The authors are named Dunning and Kruger. You may have seen their name in the news, not so recently. What they describe here became pretty famous in the psychology world and beyond. It's called now the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And the Dunning-Kruger Effect is summed up pretty well in the title here. Let me read that to you. The title of this is Unskilled and Unaware of It: How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments. Let me read that to you again. Unskilled and unaware of it: how difficulties in recognizing one's own incompetence lead to inflated self-assessments. Well, I wrote an opera called the Incompetence Opera. It's based on that paper and a few other related things. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to show you the final song from that performance at the Ig Nobel ceremony. Now, it's an opera, so it's fictional. The main singer is a psychologist, and he one day goes into a bar where he does not know anybody. So he goes into this strange bar, and he decides, for some reason, that he needs to explain to everybody in there all about the Dunning-Kruger effect. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see this psychologist go into a bar and explain to strangers all about the Dunning-Kruger effect. And you're going to see those strangers react. You're going to see the people who are customers in the bar and the people who work in the bar reacting to this strange psychologist who feels compelled to explain the Dunning-Kruger effect. Lights down, please. Lights down, please. Thank you. Okay.
Dunning-Kruger, Dunning-Kruger. Psychologists have shown that people unskilled at something somehow do not know their own incompetence. No! Incompetence. Some people's own incompetence somehow gives them a stupid sense that anything they do is first rate. They think it's great. But no, it's not. The research clearly perceptions. I say distraction. Dunning-Kruger trap. They don't know that they don't know.
Yeah. And that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. I want to finish up my part of the night by showing you just a few other things from the magazine. The magazine comes out 6 times a year, and it's full of research with this quality. We hope that it makes people laugh and then think. Most of this, people notice things and they send it to us. So if you notice something that I should be writing about, and if you notice something that should win an Ig Nobel Prize, just send us email. Just go on the website and send it to us. These are just a few things that we put in the magazine recently. Every issue has a special new theme. So, recently, the issue was on surprising tastes. This is a medical journal report. It's about advice this doctor has, new advice, a new way he says he discovered, a better way to treat somebody who's choking on food or choking on something. You can see his method there. So if you see somebody choking, you might want to try that, or you might not. It's brand new. Here's another report from a very different journal. These are some doctors in Turkey who say that a lot of depression is caused by people wearing sunglasses, and that if people would stop wearing sunglasses, they would get more sunlight and they would cheer up. So this is a fairly new theory as well. Here's a different kind of report. People were curious about what happens when a balloon bursts very near somebody's idea. Everybody worries for a moment in their lifetime that, oh, maybe you're getting ear damage. So they tried to measure how great is that sound. And their measurements, you can see here in the words up there, are, we found that in the inflated to rupture condition, the average impulse level was more intense than a 12-gauge shotgun, nearly as intense as a .357 Magnum. Next time you go to a birthday party with balloons, well, you know, happy birthday. And this is the last thing that I brought to show you. This is a report about thermal asymmetry of the scrotum in naked and clothed postmen in France. The graph there, you see, has 2 different lines. One is the left, and one is the right. You can analyze this on your own. So that's that. And the next Ig Nobel ceremony is coming up in the second half of the year, September 12th. It's a Thursday night. You're all invited. The tickets go on sale over the internet in July. If you cannot travel to Massachusetts to be there in person, you can watch the webcast. It's free. It starts at 6 o'clock in the evening in Massachusetts, so that translates to midnight here. And you can make a party of it. Around the world, people organize parties to watch this. And if you want to do that and let us know, we'll try to spread the word and help you get some more friends to come watch it. So that's all the stuff that I've brought to show you. And Case will talk in a couple of minutes about the work that won him an Ig Nobel Prize. In the meantime, if you have any questions or complaints, I would be very happy to take them. So, thanks. Yeah. And I'll put this on so I can understand if you ask. All right. Does this work?
Hi, I can speak English, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll listen to the translation anyway.
Okay, cool. So I was thinking, what was the reaction of your alma mater to the idea of giving an award like this? What was the, because now I can see they are very enthusiastic, all of them.
Yeah.
But the first initial reaction.
Oh, what was Harvard's reaction to it? You know, nobody's ever asked me that question. The first 4 years we had it at MIT, which is in the same city. It's just 2 miles down the street. And they were very enthusiastic. And we ran into problems in the 5th year with one administrator at MIT, so I decided to move it. And happily, there were a lot of people at Harvard who had seen the publicity, hoping it would move down the street. So it turned out to be pretty easy. And we had a lot of people helping, and that's been true every year. It's been great. As an institution, I would say it's a slightly different thing, because Harvard is the oldest bureaucracy in North America. So reactions there can take anywhere from 50 years to 200.
So they just didn't notice yet, technically.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. There's a question here, I know, and I think there are quite a few others.
Okay, so I can also ask in English. So my question is there additional background for the Peace Reward for the karaoke reward?
Is there, I'm sorry?
Additional background for the Peace Reward for the karaoke invention.
Oh yeah, most of these, almost all of these have stories that are much richer than what I'm telling you here. You know, we always summarize them in the citation, which is just about 1 sentence. The karaoke thing has a lot of different things to it. I'll tell you how he says he invented it, for one thing. In about 1971, he was a drummer in a rock band. He always says he was not a very good drummer, but he was. And he also was their manager. And he said that one day he screwed up. He made a mistake, and he managed to book the band to, at the same moment, play in a club in that city and a club in a different city. And he did not want to lose the money. Now, in all of these, they played on a regular basis, and they had audiences that kept coming and singing with them. So the audience loved them and knew them. And he told the manager of one club, I'll give you a tape recording of us, of the band playing. Just play that. The customers know us. They know the songs. They will sing along with it. And they did. And so he got the idea, oh, I will make a machine which I will rent to bars and call it karaoke. He did that, but it was no success at all. He managed to rent, I think, 11 of them, decided that was a failure, and he gave up. Then a few years later, he looked around. There's karaoke every place. Now, at the same time, or not at the same time, but since then, we have heard from many other people, each one of them saying, no, I'm the person who invented karaoke. And it's possible that all of them did. You know, it's a very simple thing, and around that time, for the first time, tape recorders were becoming cheap and simple. And everybody had a tape recorder then. It was easy for anybody to do. Anybody could have invented this. Maybe it's true. There's more to the story, too, but that's... Oh, wait, why did we call it the Peace? I didn't explain that, huh? We gave it the Peace Prize rather than some other category because by inventing karaoke, He invented an entirely new way for people to learn to tolerate each other. Okay, question up here.
Yes, thank you for your interesting presentation. Yeah. What's the actual impact of an Ig Nobla Prize on one's professional career? Is it that after this beautiful party is over, everyone actually ostracizes the laureates, or is it the other way around, that it serves as a springboard for one to develop their career?
There have been 290 winners, so they have not all had the same experience, and I know only about some of them. Mostly from what I know, it's been pretty good. For one thing, as I mentioned, in most cases, we offer it to them. They can say no if they don't want to. Especially in recent years, there have been a lot of cases where their institutions are very happy. Some of the winners get tremendous amounts of publicity around the world. Not all of them, but a lot of them get really astounding amounts of attention from the press. And the institutions usually are very happy about that. If you're a scientist, or in fact, if you're a human being, almost anything you do in your lifetime is not going to get noticed by the world. There are, 7 or 8 billion people. So to get noticed can be a pretty good thing. And we always tell reporters, when you talk to the new winners, why don't you ask them, what else have you done in your career? Because they all have done interesting things. Things happen. One of them who won an Ig Nobel Prize 10 years later won a Nobel Prize. So that was exciting for everybody. It was for something different, but it sounded even more childish than what won him his Ig Nobel Prize. These things, again, they're unexpected. A few people have said they had unhappy experiences, but I don't remember a single one that said anything really bad. I sometimes get angry letters or email or phone calls, not from the winners, but from people who admire them, who say, they should get a Nobel Prize. And, what can we say about that? So we say nothing. You will have, in a few minutes, the experience of hearing an actual Ig Nobel Prize winner, so I hope you will ask him that question. Okay, next question. There's one here.
No.
Well, it should be recorded also for history.
Okay, so my question is, how did it all start? I mean, how did you get the idea? Did you just talk to someone, or did it just occur to you that there must be a lot of people who do funny research, and did you just sort of like sit down in front of the PubMed one evening and just started, searching the database or something?
Yeah. In 1990, I became the editor of a science magazine, which itself happened in a strange way. I was doing very different things. I had a little software company. And I decided to see whether the things that I wrote for myself and for friends, whether I could get something published. I had never tried. So I sent some articles I wrote off to a science magazine. And I got a telephone call from a man who said, hello, I am the publisher of the magazine. I got your articles. Would you be the editor of the magazine? So that's how I became the editor of a science magazine. And suddenly, I began to meet all kinds of people from everywhere who were doing all kinds of strange, some of them wonderful things that were funny and thought-provoking. And I kept thinking with a lot of them, this person is going to live her entire life, and then she will die, and almost nobody will know that she did this. And that's wrong. Somebody should do something. And I thought, well, we can do something small. So we did. Another question or two, and then we'll go over to case, or not. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. I'm very happy and grateful you all came. Thank you. It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you the winner of the Ig Nobel Prize for Biology in the year 2003. He's tonight come all the way from Rotterdam in the Netherlands to join us. He will explain what he did. You heard a little bit about him during the introduction, but now you'll hear the story straight from the person himself. Please welcome Kees Moeliker.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my first time in Poland. And this is the building where it all started. This is the Natural History Museum in Rotterdam, where at that time I worked as a curator, responsible for the collection, responsible for making the collection bigger, responsible for researching the collection. And in those years, the museum got a new building, a new extension to the old building. And as you can see, it's made of glass. And this proved to be a very profitable thing for the bird collection especially. And that's because birds don't get the concept of glass. They fly into it, think they can fly through, but they can't and they die. And especially in those early years of the new building, we had bird casualties on a weekly basis. And at first we were, of course, shocked by the nature of this, because I'm a lover of nature and I like the birds to sing and fly. So we tried to prevent it, to put stickers on the glass, but it didn't help. And the architect didn't want to change the building, so I made a mind shift. And I told myself that all birds that crash into the building will get a place in the collection. And then it became fun for me. And every morning as a curator, I walked around the museum and collected the dead bird, gave them to our taxidermist, and then the collection grew. And in those years, in those weeks or months in 1995, I developed the absolute ear for the sounds birds make against the glass when they get killed. And on June 5th, 1995, at 6:05 in the afternoon, I heard a tremendous loud bang against the glass wall of the museum, close to my office. And I said to myself, this must be something special. And it was something special. When I looked out of the window, this is what I saw. The bird that's lying there on its belly is a duck, a mallard duck, and it's dead. It crashed into the glass. And it died instantly. But next to the dead duck is a live duck. And then this happened. The live duck mounted the dead duck and started to copulate, started to have sex. Well, I'm a biologist, I'm an ornithologist. I knew my biology books, I knew about bird behavior. But this was something that's absolutely new to me. One is dead, one is alive, there's copulation, it's necrophilia. And if you look carefully at the birds here, you can see that both ducks are of the male sex. So, homosexual necrophilia. I'd never heard about homosexual necrophilia in ducks. So I took a chair, took my notebook and my camera. I went down one floor to see this display from close quarters behind the glass. And I could do so for 75 minutes. Not sure if you know, if you've ever seen any ducks copulate. It takes normally between 10 and 60 seconds, that's it. And this took 75 minutes. And only because I myself decided to stop it. Because I took my notes, I took pictures, and I became hungry. I wanted to go home. In a way, it was maybe it's a kind of it was a kind of competition between me and the duck won. And so I went out to collect the duck. I mean, that's my job. I had to put those birds in the freezer. Before I put the bird in the freezer, the duck in the freezer, I checked the sex of the victim. And this is a rare picture of a duck's penis. Are you aware of genital morphology in birds? No? Oh, okay. Well, there are about 10,000 bird species in the world currently. Only 300 have a penis. And the largest group of penis-bearing birds are the ducks, the geese, and the swan. And all the other birds don't have a penis. They have a multifunctional opening called the cloaca. But this proves the male sex of the victim. These are my notes from June 5th, 1995. And I kept my notes to myself for about 6 years. That's because I did not have any background information about homosexual necrophilia in birds. It was absolutely unknown to me. It was not in the biology books I studied. So I kept the notes to myself. And only about 6 years later, when this book was published in 1999, it's 1,000 pages filled with examples of homosexual behavior in the animal kingdom, ranging from insects to whales and anything in between, including duck. So then I had a framework and I had the courage to publish the first case of homosexual necrophilia in the mallard. And here is the situation again. A is my office from where I heard it. B is where the duck hit the glass. And C is from where I observed it. And here are the ducks again. And as you, well, maybe you know this if you're a scientist and you publish a paper, only 6 or 7 people actually read the paper. And this was my fate as well. So I basically forgot about writing the paper, but I wanted to, well, I wanted to make it known. But then there was, of course, this glorious moment when I got the message from Marc telling me, well, can we have a private conversation about your duck paper? And so that's when it all started for me, winning the Ig Nobel Prize. And it's my pleasure, it's my personal pleasure to show you the duck tonight. It is not only my first time in Poland, but also the duck's first time in Poland. So here it is. After, when we're finished, we can, well, there's a, let's say, a pointless photo opportunity. But after winning this Ig Nobel Prize in 2003, my life really, really changed in a positive way. First of all, people were starting to send me all kinds of duck-related things. And by now, I mean, it's almost 25 years ago now, it's become a large collection. It's a nice and large collection. So, and whenever I say goodbye to the Natural History Museum where I work, I can make a big exhibition about it. Yeah. But more importantly, that really, really helped me, that people from all over the world sent me their observations of remarkable animal behavior. And I could compile books about it. I became known as the Duck Guy, that's a nickname. The book is written in Dutch and it's been recently translated in German. And I hope there will be many more translations. And I'll give you some of the examples of interesting animal behavior that were sent to me. And this is a so-called mating mistake. Here is a moose trying to copulate with a bronze statue of a bison. This was back in the US a couple of years ago. And I always check stories like this, of course. And I called the people up who witnessed this, and they said, well, this really happened. And both subjects were damaged in the action. This happened in the Netherlands in 2006. Here's a frog trying to copulate with a goldfish. Well, this is, it's not so special if you look at it, because frogs, they can copulate with almost anything when it's the right time of year. So this is just a minor thing. This was new. This was new to me. This is a frog having sex with the head of a turtle, the head of a dead turtle. I haven't come up with a term for this behavior. This is a picture sent to me from Kazakhstan a couple of years ago. This is a tortoise, and the tortoise is trying to mate with the empty shell of his brother, which is also quite remarkable for a tortoise. These are cane toads. This is a picture taken in Australia in 2007. Here you see a clear case of necrophilia in cane toads. But what is remarkable in this picture, it was a roadkill, so the one that's dead was killed by a truck. And then you see copulation here. And as I told you, frogs and toads, they copulate with almost anything. But what's really, really interesting here, and it's a very rare picture, is the mating position. The missionary position is very, very rare in the animal kingdom. And here are the 7 known mating positions in frogs and toads. And there is, as you can see here, no missionary position. I think for you tonight, as a take-home message, F, well, give it a try. And then there's more necrophilia in ducks. So after about 15 years, there was the second case of necrophilia in mallard ducks. This was in Belgium, in Antwerp, on broad daylight, and about 200 people witnessed it. And here it is. This is straight heterosexual necrophilia. Here is a case of heterosexual necrophilia in the turkey. This was sent to me from the US. The female below flew into the electric fence of a prison on the wrong side of the fence, and the male worked on the female for the entire day, as witnessed and photographed by the prisoners, who had nothing else to do than watch this. Okay. Of course, seeing all these pictures and all these reports about necrophiliac behavior in the animal kingdom, I became curious what caused this. I mean, why do they do this? Of course, we have to make a distinction between human necrophiliacs who are mentally ill and often are serial killers. But in the animal kingdom, it's another story. And I came across an interesting paper written in the 1950s in the US about the turkey, about the... there were some researchers, those are the pictures on the right, the black and white pictures. They wanted to know what is necessary for a turkey to copulate, what is necessary to have sex. And that's because they were breeding turkeys for food. I mean, they eat a lot of turkey in the US at certain times. And what they did is they had like 5 or 6 sexually aroused male turkeys, and they presented the male turkey a stuffed female turkey. And this female was detachable. You could take off the wings, you could take off the tail, you could take off the breast. And what appeared in the study that only the mere side of the head of the stuffed female, the back side of the head, was enough for the male turkey to get aroused and to have sex. So there's little needed for birds in general also to get sexually aroused and have sex. And as you can see here, this is a city pigeon, and I have collected about 20 cases of necrophiliac behavior in pigeons. And you can see here, it's a perfectly normal way of copulating. The only problem, the only thing that's different is the death of the partner below. But the movements are exactly the same. And this, to my, well, I must say to my joy, this is the second case of homosexual necrophilia in the mallard. It happened in 2017, very close to my home, and thanks to social media, I was about the first to learn about this case. And of course, there is the copulation, and of course we could collect this duck for the Natural History Museum in the Netherlands, and we have now a second specimen. Both ducks are part of a pretty successful exhibit in the Natural History Museum in Rotterdam called Dead Animal Tales. And we collect animals there who somehow got killed under peculiar circumstances, especially circumstances where they collide with human activities or human things. And I will show you one of the recent additions to our collection and to our exhibit. This is a fish, a catfish, an armored catfish, taken from the throat of a man in the Netherlands. And he developed the tradition at birthday parties to drink a lot of beer, which is okay for birthday parties, and then take the fishes, then take the live fishes from his aquarium. There were friends, and they swallow the goldfishes from their aquarium alive. This works perfectly well. But they were still hungry at one time, and so when all the goldfishes were finished, they reached to the catfishes were on the bottom of the tank. And the catfish has an interesting defense behavior. When there's danger, like when you're being swallowed by a drunk man, they erect the spines of their pectoral fins, like this. So the fish got stuck in the man's throat. And of course, this was a medical case report. It was life-threatening. The man, the doctors took the fish from his throat. It was sent directly to the museum. We are next to the hospital, so there's a short line. And the man was in intensive care for about 2 weeks. And here's a little peek in the man's throat. On the left, there is the fish, and on the right, there is the pectoral fin with the spines who got stuck there. So this is something you better not do at home. Okay, I will conclude to invite you all to an event called Dead Duck Day. It's on June 5th, the day the duck crashed against the museum. It's an open-air ceremony. It starts at exactly the time when the duck crashed, at 5 to 6 in the afternoon. We have a memorial sign attached to the museum. More and more people come to that Duck Day. When we started in 1996, it was just me and the duck, and now we have to apply for a permit for an open air event. Well, the duck is of course remembered. We have a fashion line. But what's more important, the real purpose of that Duck Day is to raise awareness for the problem birds have with glass buildings. And this is a global problem that causes billions of birds to die. And there's more and more glass buildings, and I think that should stop, and we try to raise awareness for that problem. There are solutions, of course, and everywhere where when I travel, I check buildings, and I found this building here in Warsaw. This is the Supreme Court, I think, and I assure you this is a real bird killer. So if you have a chance to talk to the people who work there, or people in charge, we'll let them either demolish the building or paint it black, then the problem will be over. Okay, so when the ceremony is over, the little Dead Duck Day celebration is over, we all join in a Chinese restaurant close to the museum where there is a 6-course duck dinner. And this is real. It's only 29 euros. You get 6 courses. And if you like duck, it's a very good occasion. So when you're around, or you can also travel to the Netherlands to be there on June 5th, you're welcome. Thank you.
May I ask you one question?
Yeah, okay. Oh, now...
I'm so curious. Could you explain, as biologist, why sex with a dead animal takes longer than with a live one, and how it works with human?
Okay. The first part of your question is that's a good one. I mean, there's always when there's sex, it's always a matter of cooperation, you know. So there's feedback coming, one way or another. And in case of having sex with a dead partner, there's absolutely no feedback. So there is basically no end to it. And I was criticized by my peers why I stopped this behavior. Why didn't I let nature take its course? And that's true, of course. I mean, it was. I think it could have been very, very long. Maybe there is no end to this. Yeah. And the human part is for later, when we have some drinks. Thank you. Next question.
And what is your research besides this dead duck?
Can you repeat the question?
What is your other research?
Okay, my other research, yeah. Yes. Well, I'm one of the few specialists in the world on a little group of birds from the Asia Pacific called monarch flycatchers. So if you want to learn, and I can tell you more about flycatchers from eastern Indonesia than about dead ducks. And I'm currently working on the taxonomy of eastern Indonesian fruit bats. And that's all the research I do, and besides being a museum director. There's one over there. Yeah.
Is there any change in the death toll annually caused by your building?
I didn't hear it.
Is there any change in the number of dead birds caused by your building?
Yeah. There is. It changed because the birds that reside in the park somehow learn to avoid the building. It's a little learning process, and we put up a big metal scarecrow outside the museum. I didn't bring a picture of it. It's a giant crow, about as big as the bird, big as the museum, and it helps to scare the birds off. Yeah. So the curator who is now working in the museum, he has less work than I had at the time. Yeah. But we cannot stop it. It's impossible to stop birds from flying into class. They will continue to do that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
One more question.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Could you show penis? I mean, of the duck, of course.
Oh no, that's impossible because
on the picture there was
the picture, yeah. Of course.
Oh, but
where it is?
Yeah. Where is it?
Well, this bird is taxidermied. It is preserved, and all the parts that can rot are taken away, and including the penis. So there's
you
nothing.
cannot preserve the penis?
Yes, but I cannot preserve it dry. It's preserved in alcohol, in liquid. And I could not bring it to Poland because of the alcohol, yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's obvious.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay.